We all like to think that we're the captains of our own ships.
Yeah.
That if someone told us to do something,
Hmm?
something really wrong, we'd say no.
It's a very comforting thought. But the source material we're looking at today, specifically the AQA Psychology notes on obedience, suggests that backbone is, well, it's a lot more flexible than we think.
Yeah, this isn't just about following orders. We're really doing a deep dive into the mechanics of why we obey, what actually happens in our brain when an authority figure walks into the room.
And that's the key. It really is like a switch. The core idea
Yes.
here is this move from what they call an autonomous state to an agentic state.
Right. So the autonomous state, that's me right now, I hope. I'm responsible for my own actions. If I say something silly on this deep dive, that's on me.
You own it. But the agentic state is completely different. The word itself comes from agent. You start to see yourself as just an instrument, a vessel for carrying out someone else's wishes.
And that's the agentic shift.
Exactly. It's that moment you move from one state to the other, usually because you see someone as having legitimate authority. Once that shift happens, you feel less personal responsibility.
The notes called it a reduction in moral strain. That phrase really stuck with me. It's that awful feeling you get in your stomach when you know you're doing something wrong. But the agentic state is like a painkiller for that.
It is, because in your mind, you're not the one responsible. The authority figure is. You're just following orders.
But we don't just shift for anyone. I mean, if some random person on the street told me to do something, I wouldn't. The notes really stress this idea of legitimacy of authority.
Right. You don't obey the person, you obey the role they represent. We're wired to look for social cues that say, this person is in charge.
The props, the uniforms, the lab coats, a fancy setting like a university.
Props is a perfect way to put it.
And the data on those props is just, it's wild. We all know the baseline Milgram study, right? The lab coat,
Yeah.
Yale, 65% of people went all the way to 450 volts.
It's a lethal shot.
A lethal shock. But then they took away the prop. The experimenter just wore everyday clothes. And obedience didn't just dip, it completely fell apart.
It crashed down to 20%.
Just from a change of clothes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It makes you realize how superficial that trigger for legitimacy can be.
It is superficial, but it's deeply ingrained. We are hierarchical creatures. But there's another variable in the data that I think is even more powerful than a uniform.
You're talking about the social support numbers?
Yes. For me, this is the real takeaway. We focus so much on the person in charge and the person obeying, but Milgram also tested what happens when other people are in the room.
And this is the part that actually scared me. When two other teachers in the room just obeyed without question, the real participants' obedience shot up to, what was it?
92.5%.
92.5. That's almost everybody. So if the group goes along, it's basically impossible for an individual to resist.
The agentic shift gets supercharged by peer pressure.
But, and this is the silver lining, the hopeful part of the data, it works both ways.
It absolutely does. When the participants saw two other people stand up and refuse to go on, just seeing someone else say no,
The whole thing just collapsed.
obedience plummeted all the way down to 10%.
From over 90% down to 10, that is an incredible swing.
It shows you how fragile the agentic state really is. It kind of relies on this illusion that everyone agrees. The second one person breaks that consensus, the authority's power just evaporates.
It breaks the spell.
It reintroduces personal responsibility. You can't say I had no choice anymore because you literally just watched someone else make a different choice.
So to kind of wrap this all up,
Mm.
we're not as independent as we'd like to believe.
Mm-hmm.
We're hardwired to hand over control to someone who looks the part.
But we're also hardwired to follow our peers.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away.
Fine.
We always ask ourselves, what would I do in that situation? Would I be the one to stand up to a tyrant? But looking at that 10% statistic, maybe the most powerful thing you can do isn't fighting the leader. Maybe it's just being the first person in the crowd to stop clapping.
The power of being the first dissenter. It's something to think about.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.